Good afternoon and welcome into Two-Man Game here on ClaibsOnline.com. I'm Matthew Roccio. That's Bob Ramsey, and we're here to talk a little basketball on your phone, through Spotify, Twitter, however you happen to be watching us right now or listening to us. We're here to talk a little basketball. Rammer, how you doing today, sir?
It's a great day in St. Louis. It's a beautiful winter day. I've got basketball tomorrow. I'm very happy.
There you go. That sounds like a lot of fun, and obviously it always is. Rammer, let's dive right into a little bit. Obviously, the last time we spoke was our pregame chat before St. Louis and Davidson just a couple nights ago on Wednesday. St. Louis won that matchup 78-65 over the Wildcats. It was a big win, obviously, to score a little bit bigger than I think the game was throughout the majority of it, the way it was back and forth. Jumping right into it, I have just one big question for all six of these games we talked about in the pregame. Is St. Louis getting better each game leading up to the A10 conference tournament? So that's my big question. Right off the bat, your takeaway from the Davidson win, and thinking in your head of my big question, did St. Louis improve during that win?
You know, I want to say yes. They looked better, but I've been fooled by this team previously this year, and so I'm not quite ready to say that yet. And here's what I mean. You don't know how much of that is matchups in a given game, and how if you've got an advantage in matchups, or even somebody gets hot that you're not used to, or somebody the other team is colder than they're used to, you know, is it really part of a trend, or is it just isolated to that game? So traditionally, Travis Ford's teams do get better in February and leading into March. It feels like it could be that way, but I'm not really ready to put the stamp of approval on it just yet. One of the trends that I see, it seems like it gets better every game, is Yuri Collins' defense. Foster Loyer, their point guard, well, they're trying to move him off the two somewhat. It didn't matter, off to the two. It didn't matter. Yuri Collins made it a nightmare for Foster Loyer. You take away that, that's one of their big two offensive weapons. If you take that away, they're going to struggle, and they did. And so that trend I really like. The other trend I really like is, and I still don't know what the explanation was, and I don't want to jinx things by diving into a deep conversation with either Gibson, Jimerson, or Travis Ford, but that month-long shooting slump that Jimerson was in December, at the very beginning of January, it appears to be gone. In conference play, he's a completely different player. I think it's close to 44% from beyond the arc now. And
I'll have it here in just a second.
So are those two trends I can count on? I think so. But I've been burned before, so we'll see.
That's fair. And the numbers on Gibson right now, yeah, you said 44% on 6.5 threes per game. He's making just under 3. So, yeah, just about 44% right there for Gibson Jimerson in conference play. That's been absolutely huge.
So what he needs to do is those were the conference numbers, double those game to game. What has been happening is he'll have a game where he'll make 5 or 6, but then he'll have a game where he'll only make 2, won't be shooting bad, but will be like 2 of 4 or 2 of 5 because the defense has really limited his looks. So what the Billikens and Gibson Jimerson have to do is continue to get the volume as well.
Yeah, and I think we do need to point out just how weighted parts of that is. I mean, if you look at so the total numbers, like I said, he's taking about 6.5 per game, and he's making about 44%. He's made 19 threes over the last 4 games. And if you look at his best stretch in conference play, again, when he's shooting well, the best stretch he did across 4 games is like 12 or 11 threes. So, I mean, his volume over the last 4 games has been easily his biggest glut of made threes.
Except
at any other point in the season.
Except, look at Dayton. That was game before last.
He was 2 for 6. Exactly.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, and obviously that's the big loss. And so I thought Gibson, Jimerson, again, I think more important is when you look at the difference between when he made the shots and when he missed the shots. When he missed those first three, they weren't good attempts from the offense. The offense didn't set him up well. He was covered when he was taking all three of them. And then the four makes, the offense ran efficiently. The guys picked their screen. I think the guys, got their players when they set their screens a little bit cleaner. And then all four of those were, again, they weren't wide open, but they were that kind of open where the guy gets there and you think you got a hand in his face, but a guy like Jimmer, it's still essentially open at that point. And so when he hits those four in the first half, the offense was just flowing so much better. And I think that's kind of the big difference in the big progression I saw from early in the first when they had some trouble and then they figured things out. And then beyond that, I think the big wide, roller coaster kind of way the game was, I think it was that was just more of a basketball game, the way it can be streaky sometimes. I don't think that game was like a large example of the big peaks and valleys we've seen from SLU. I just thought that was a natural kind of runs of a game.
Yeah, I thought so too. I'd love to go over the video, and I defer to you, especially because most of it was down on your end. I thought the offense was working. He just wasn't making shots. You thought that was a little more stagnant, less ball movement early in the game?
A little bit earlier in the game, yeah. I thought it was a pretty rough – I thought it was a pretty clunky start to the game. I thought it was, and here's the thing. It was less bad effort and a lot more bad execution because the difference wasn't necessarily a guy being in his wrong spot or a guy not running on offense. It was that in the plays they were running to start the game, not a single Wildcat was being held up by a screen. No one was actually opening up space on the court for the players. I think the most indicative one is down on my end where I was. He comes off that strong run they always run where they put the two screeners on the wing and he runs it from the corner. And he comes off both of those and he puts the shot off the glass. I mean, I don't think he even got rim. Forrester didn't really get his guy on the screen, and the guy was right there in his hip pocket. You look at a couple other plays like the one where they get the shot in the right corner down by my end. Well, he's coming down the wing, and he gets that kind of a hammer screen that gets a little bit more of the defender. The defender gets his hand up, but again, you have to realize when we're talking about good shooters like Gibson, things that we would usually call like there's actual cover. The guy's in your grill, you can't get a clean shot. But if a guy gets there late, and a guy like Gibson, if he's already up and in his motion, if a guy comes in there late, that's not covered. That it looks like he is, but that's not covered. The difference is first three shots, guys were in his grill, real. The other four, he was either open or was that barely fake kind of covered. And that's where I saw the difference. But again, we talk about effort and guys not moving in other games. I thought this was a problem of just not the cleanest execution. And I think that is kind of a fine line, but I think there is a big difference. Yeah,
very interesting. And the Bills still are not hitting on all cylinders offensively. But they are getting it to where finally in that game, they got three people contributing on offense. Pickett, who'd been in a terrible slump, and he talked a little bit about it with the media, and he knew it's interesting. He credited his teammates for pushing him to get back to where he was. I like that. Sincere Parker had some really nice moments. Javonte Perkins couldn't get it going, had to come out. And if the Billikens can ever get everybody having a good game at the same time, they can be really dangerous.
Yeah, and I think that you're pointing out Javon finally getting into a groove, but Javonte not being able to get out there. Sincere having a solid game, but not the biggest. I think that's kind of what I was going to say, which is it's a good win, but Davidson's a below 500 team. And so it being so close at times and not being as close as the numbers would indicate, the final being a 13-point win, it's not the most jump up for joy, sunshine and lollipops. But again, we're looking for little things that tell us that SLU might do better in Brooklyn than some of the bad games. That's what we're looking for at this point. And I think we saw that against Davidson. And I think the big thing is going to be the continuation of a couple of those things into the matchup tomorrow evening against Duquesne, which I'm going to change up to right now, because it's a fascinating matchup. All the numbers between these two teams are strikingly similar. The big difference for me, though, it's amazing how similar they are. But the big difference for me that I want to point out is one of them had a much easier non-conference schedule than the other one. And that you have to weight the numbers a little bit differently in that case, just because everything else is so eerily similar. But here's the big number I want to point out to you, because I know you're going to like it, Rammer. Duquesne is one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the conference, but they are also the worst team in the conference at allowing offensive rebounds on the other end. So the bottom line is, we always talk about this game being one of the boards. This game's going to come down, can SLU stop one of the best offensive rebounding teams, and can they take advantage of them on the other end? That's it. You have the size thing isn't a big thing. You both start. SLU actually starts a slightly larger lineup than Duquesne does. They have a 6'10" guy coming off the bench. So do the Billikens. They have a couple bigger forwards. The Billikens like to play those guard wing kind of guys at forward. So that might be the difference. But this is a game where you can dominate the boards, and you have to. Again, this is a lot like the LaSalle game or the George Mason game, where you can do it, and if you don't, it's a huge indictment.
I can't argue with that point. One of the things that encourages me is Jake Forrester and his rebounding, in particular in the first half. Okoro played more in the second half. Franco is playing so well when he's in there, but he's got to stay out of foul trouble. If he does and can give me 22 minutes, 24 minutes, because Forrester got worn out a little bit, in particular in the first half. Okoro sat so much because of foul trouble. If they can shift those minutes a little bit between the two, that tandem has a chance to play really, really well. And I think the game against Duquesne could be another opportunity for that to shine.
Another big thing coming in, if you look at Duquesne, is statistically, we keep talking about teams coming in to face SLU that aren't good three-point shooting teams, but inevitably have a good three-point shooting night against the Billikens. Well, other than George Washington, this is the best three-point shooting team that the Billikens have faced this year in conference play. And so obviously that being a big problem so far, I think it's right off the bat, you have to look at, if they are a smaller lineup than you, that usually means they can shoot a little bit more, and they don't have, one guy, if you look at the numbers, they don't have one guy that is 100% the deadliest. D.A. Grant, 15 points. He takes a lot of threes. He hits a lot, about 40%. He's the big one. But, they have Clark, Gunn, Brewer, McGriff when he gets in, takes about 4 a game. So the big one's D.A. Grant. But beyond that, they have multiple guys who can shoot from deep. So right out of the gate, question is, how can SLU slow down a team from shooting big from downtown?
And you need whoever is in your lineup, you have to concentrate it. You need them to be able to make offensive plays. So defensively, you want Hargrove in there. You want Pickett in there. They've got to produce on the other end as well. You can tie them up, but if you're not scoring either, then it can create a problem. On the other hand, it could be a good old-fashioned shootout.
And here's possible. The big thing that's going to be the difference is, does Yuri Collins shadowing Grant work for the Billikens defensively? Grant's 6'2", Brewers, they start him at point guard. He's 5'8", and he's not the deadliest player, but he's not nothing either. So I wonder, SLU sticks to their man coverage defense. Are you able to get away with, not necessarily hiding, are you able to get away though with hyper focusing Collins on Grant, and then getting away with a Gibson Jimerson who has 5 inches, 6 inches, 8 inches actually, I think, on Brewer, and just kind of say, we're going to take the fact that he has the size and focus Collins on Grant in just a crazy way. In his hip pocket, annoying him. I want Grant to hate Yuri Collins by halftime.
Well, and we've seen that defensive matchup over the last 5-6 weeks.
Yep.
In particular, I'm thinking of George Washington. Jimerson did a great job on their distributor, while Collins went to the shooter. I would expect that's what we'll see. So the question will be, can the shooter shoot over Uri, or will Uri hug up on him enough that he really can't get the ball in shooting position? And can Jimerson prevent straight line drives from the point guard?
Yeah, absolutely. I was trying to think because Uri missed. Didn't Uri miss George Washington?
What I'm saying is that's where we saw Jimerson guard the point guard.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And that I
and
think
has been doing more of it since.
Yeah, and then you combine that with Yuri's off-ball defense at like George Mason, where he was just in the guy's kitchen the entire game. You combine those two things, and I actually think while the numbers and some of them don't break St. Louis's way, especially the three-point shooting number, I actually think the defensive matchup for the first time this season really does give SLU an advantage. And the big thing here, we were just talking about how much do you weight a win against a below 500 team in Davidson. And Duquesne is not below 500. They're having a very solid 18-8 season, 8-5 in conference play. But they also have a loss to a program that just shut down their basketball program because they were the worst in college basketball, and terrible things were happening there in New Mexico. They lost by 13 to New Mexico State early in the season. So this is another one of those games where talking about improving every game going to Brooklyn, this can't just be a solid W. I hate to just qualify and be like, well, you have to win by 8 points. But and again, I'm not going to give it that kind of thing. But you have to dominate and play well for long stretches against a team that you should be better than. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Duquesne, but I just think we can all agree that St. Louis, if they want to be the team we thought they were going to be, if they want to be the team that can make a run through the A-10 conference tournament and into the NCAA tournament, then they have to be able to come out and command the game for long stretches against a team like Duquesne. I think that's I don't think that's taking anything against those guys. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I'm going to slightly disagree. I think we're at a point that you find ways to win regardless of how it looks. And by the way, to defend Duquesne a little bit, you can be thrown off your game a little bit when the people you're playing are packing heat. Just saying.
Damn it, that was good. That was really good.
I'm just saying.
That was really good. Yeah, that's fair. It's completely fair. Completely fair.
Okay. And I'll tell you the other thing that'll be interesting to watch tomorrow. Keith Dambrot and who, by the way, folks probably remember, coached LeBron James in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Real interesting cat, hard-nosed guy, coaches hard, is fiery on the sideline. Who does that remind you of? He and Travis Ford have a lot of similarities. And
that's why the offensive profile of their team is the exact freaking same.
Maybe so.
Like even you look at the breakdown, A10 Stats on Twitter does this great. You even look at the breakdown of shots at the rim, 2-point shots, 3-point shots. It's all within like 1 or 2% of each other.
It really is.
It's insane. One other stat I want to throw out because this is fascinating. We've talked about turnovers. This is insane when you look at what Duquesne has done in their ability to force turnovers lately. Their last time they've only allowed single-digit turnovers in a game was 8 games ago versus Richmond. Since then, the turnovers for their opponent have been 17, 13, 14, 18, 15, 17, 20, 24, and then 14 against St. Joseph's. And that goes with 7 of those 8 games where they had double-digit steals. So that's another thing to look out for. You dominate offensive rebounding. You stop them from three-point shooting. But if you turn the ball over 15, 16 times, everything I look at with St. Louis says they will lose that basketball game more than likely. And so you have to take care of the ball, and Duquesne makes that difficult.
Yeah, because if you turn it over more than a dozen times, and even if you win the rebound battle, you're just trading off possessions.
Yeah. So St. Louis has so they have 9 losses this year. 6 of them they've turned the ball over 14 times or more. So I mean, just when they turn the ball over exactly 14 times or more, they lose basketball games. So,
Yep.
I mean, that's another number to watch for. Again, they should win the offensive rebounding battle. That should be St. Louis's. They should, the numbers say that this shouldn't be a huge three-point shooting game. And I think what we talked about with the defensive matchup tells us it won't be. But the big thing where I have no idea which way it could go, because you never can, is whether or not St. Louis shoots themselves in the foot with a big turnover game, or, and this is something that we haven't talked about because it hasn't been the big point, but it could have been, another game where they're not shooting the free throws like they should be. There's been a couple 65, 75% free throw shooting games against Dayton, which we didn't talk about because it was a loss, or against some of the other wins they've gotten lately. We didn't talk about them because it didn't factor in, but it could have. So those two big unknown variables, like always, again, turnovers, free throws, it's going to be a huge thing on Saturday night.
I think all those things are you're correct about. And then, again, can you get consistent offensive production? The plays look, you're running good plays. They got to make shots. And when they do get an open shot, they got to make them. I do have an appreciation, especially when Pickett's out there and playing well. He and Parker and Perkins, when he's playing well, they give you that mid-range. And now theoretically, you're scoring in all three levels. That makes the Bills very dangerous.
I have a quick thing. I wasn't going to ask this, but you said production, and for a second I was going to say I care about. You said good. I care about good possessions. But you said so. Here's my thing.
Right. And that's more like a coach.
Okay. And my thought was are SLU fans over? I was just going to ask, are SLU fans, or am I overthinking the sloppy possessions and not focusing enough on the fact that it's still, again, a top 100 defense in college basketball? Like, are we focusing on the fact that there are a couple just blah possessions that happen in the game, and should we just chalk that up to that's what happens in a basketball game? Or should we just focus on the fact that they are scoring, still as essentially a top 100 team in college basketball?
Well, I don't want to speak for fandom or even segments of it. I can only say that I think one of the differences is two differences. I already mentioned it at the beginning of our podcast. Jimerson's inexplicable shooting slump is over. And Uri, as great a decision maker as he's been his whole career, I think continues to elevate and has realized that sometimes when the chips are down, the best option isn't don't pass, keep it and do something on your own. And really picking his spots on that. He's only making like one in his most recent hot streak, making like 1 3 a night, but he's like 9 of 14 or something ridiculous in his 3-point shooting. And so picking spots, using his vision and experience to understand when's the right time to pass, to probe, to shoot. And those things appear to be falling in place.
Absolutely. Well, it's another game at Chaffetz. Duquesne facing off against the Billikens. Is it 7 p.m. tip-off or is it 8 p.m. tip-off?
7 o'clock on Saturday, 6:47 on KMOX Radio.
There it is. And of course, you can hear Bob Ramsey with our good friend Earl Austin Jr. on KMOX Radio. And again, a 7 p.m. tip-off down at Chaffetz. It's going to be a fun one. Can the Billikens continue their march on to Brooklyn with another win in the A-10? We'll see. We'll be back to talk about it next week here on Two Man Game on ClavesOnline.com. Raymer, before we go, please tell everybody about our good friends at Royal Banks of Missouri.
Royal Banks have been a sponsor of Billiken basketball for a long, long time, almost as long as they've been in business, 60 years in St. Louis, and then on the east side, and in St. Charles County, and in Northeast Missouri, and each and every branch feels like your hometown bank. Royal Banks of Missouri, where better service means better banking. Member FDIC, and equal housing lender.
That is Raymer. I will talk to you tomorrow, and St. Louis can hear you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day, sir.
See you, buddy.
And have a great rest of your weekend, St. Louis.
St. Louis Acura has an unbeatable selection of new and pre-owned vehicles. We have over 200 vehicles on hand and in transit. Get the new 2023 MDX or Integra with up to $1,000 in loyalty. Rebates and financing as low as 3.9% for 60 months. You can also lease the 2023 MDX for as low as $599 a month. Or get a pre-owned certified MDX with 3.99% financing. St. Louis Acura, better than ever for you.